Okay, in this video I want to go right back to the basics for those people who are just thinking about getting into beekeeping but they're not ready to take the plunge yet because they're not too sure where to start. So I'm going to cover three basic things. One is personal safety, the other one is registering with the Department of Agriculture, and the third one is ensuring you know what your local bylaws are. So let's take those one at a time. Beekeeping. We all know bees sting. If you're going to become a beekeeper, you have to be prepared to get stung. Now, you can have as much personal protective equipment as you like, veils, gloves, and even the full suit, but you can guarantee that you will still get stung, even if you're done up like a Michelin man and you've got 3 layers on. Bees' stings are very narrow and sharp, and you'll be surprised how much they can penetrate even into thick cloth. Even wearing gloves like this that are made of kid leather, and you think that there's no way a bee sting could get through that, but I've regularly been stung on the fingers through my gloves just by inadvertently squashing a bee on a box as I picked it up. You might inadvertently leave one of your zips undone. I've even been stung after I finished beekeeping, gone into the house to take my bee suit off, didn't realise there was a bee actually sitting quietly on the back side of my suit, and when I went to pull it down I got a good corker on the thumb. So you need to be prepared to be stung. Now, for most people that's not an issue. You'll get local swelling, pain, and then it subsides after a few days. But for some people it can be deadly. If you're allergic to bees and you suffer from anaphylaxis, you need to think really seriously about whether you are prepared to take the risk. What I'd suggest you do is go and speak to a medical professional and seek advice from them. It can be deadly for people who suffer from anaphylaxis, and tragically there have been people who have died because they've just received one bee sting, because that's all it takes if you're highly allergic. So think about that first before you even go into looking any further. Okay, personal safety aside, the next thing you need to do is register with your local Department of Agriculture. Now, as a beekeeper, you might be surprised to know that you are actually a keeper of livestock, and as such you have to register with your local Department of Agriculture. Now, doing that, you will get a brand. So just like a keeper of livestock, sheep, cattle, you'll be given a brand, and obviously you can't brand your bees, but you do need to brand all your beekeeping equipment. So that means all your hive components, your boxes, your frames, everything that you own, you need to brand it with your brand so that people know who the hives belong to. It doesn't cost that much, so it's really worthwhile doing that up front and making sure that you're compliant with your Department of Agriculture. You'll get local newsletters as well that are full of information specific to your area, and it just means that you're being a responsible beekeeper, because we all need to do our bit to make sure that we look after the bees, ensure that we are keeping up with biosecurity levels, and they're a really good place to touch base with if you've got any questions or queries, if you're not too sure about how your hives are going, or if you suspect any diseases, because the last thing you want to do is spread diseases and pests to other beekeepers. So if we all work together and be responsible, it'll limit that problem. Once you've registered with the Department of Agriculture and you've got your brand, then you're all set to go out and buy some beehives. But the next question is, where do you put them? So if you've got a suburban backyard, then you need to check with your local council. Most councils have bylaws that cover beekeeping, and you might find that you are restricted to maybe 1 or 2 hives in your backyard. You'll also find that there will be restrictions about where in your backyard you can place them, so you need to have a buffer between your place and the neighbours, and quite often it's maybe a 1 or 2 metre buffer between your backyard fence or your side fence or your dwelling. So check with your local council and find out what the bylaws are concerning beekeeping. So besides the positioning of your beehive in your backyard, you also need to make sure you provide a source of water. So it's important that you have a source of water within 2 or 3 metres of the hive, because the last thing you want is for your bees to go over the fence to the next door neighbours and start drinking out of their pool. So that's not going to hold you in good stead with the neighbours. And the last thing you want is neighbours that are not supportive of you having a beehive in your backyard. So touch base with your neighbours and make sure they're happy as well, and even just sweeten them up with a few tubs of honey every now and then to keep them happy. So once you've done all those three things and you can tick all those boxes, there's nothing stopping you. Come on, get into beekeeping. It's a great place to be.